would like to call, this is Melissa Johnson, School Board President, calling the special meeting to order to discuss the continuous learning plan for 2019-2020 with Dr. Lewis to present.
Yes. Okay.
So
All right.
I will mute myself for now.
Okay. There's Carol. And then just as a reminder, first of all, good evening, everyone. As a reminder, I know occasionally we will have board members' screens, their faces on the screen, but there may be times where your face may not be visible, and so we would ask that you, if you are asking a question or making a comment, you state your name so the public will know who's making that statement. All right, and I will model that. I'm Anthony Lewis, the superintendent in Lawrence Public Schools. Excited to share with you some of the work that we've been doing. It seems like the past year, but it only has been about 2 weeks, if that, right? It really has seemed like a lot. And I will say that, and I shared this during an interview with Hank Booth. I stated that one of the things that attracted me to Kansas was this whole notion of Kansas school redesign. While we do know we do have Free State High School and three other elementary schools that are part of Kansas school redesign, which that process typically takes, the planning part takes a full year. I will tell you that we redesigned school within a matter of a couple of days. And so that really speaks to the dedication and the talent that we have here in Lawrence Public Schools. And so what I want to share with you today is just a little of the work that we've done. I know you've been seeing the work that we've been doing. I also want to share that with the community. In addition, we will share with you our continuous learning plan. And I'll provide more details as I get into the presentation. So I'm going to share my slide. I'm going to share my screen at this time. Okay. Is everyone able to see the screen okay?
Yeah, I can see it.
Yes.
I can see it.
Perfect. All right. So as we continue to navigate these uncharted waters of COVID-19, the district is taking additional steps to support our students, teachers, our schools, and our community. I think we all know how we got here in terms of developing this continuous learning plan and totally shifting the way that we deliver education. We were off to a great start this year. As you know, we were in the first year of implementing our strategic plan that we have put a lot of effort and energy into. So we had a plan. But then I'm reminded of the great philosopher Mike Tyson that said, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And so I will say that COVID-19 did punch the entire country in the mouth. But luckily, we had some amazing support from the state level, including our governor, as well as Commissioner Randy Watson and the entire State Board of Education, as well as support of our local Board of Education to develop a plan that we can continue to provide academics to our scholars. While we may feel like, I don't know who this gentleman is that Mike Tyson just knocked out, but we may feel like we're down with our current circumstances, but we're definitely not out. We were not out for the 10 count. We actually were able to pick up ourselves and continue with the work that we're doing. As I mentioned, we did have a tremendous amount of support from the state level. Randy Watson commissioned a task force, which they call the Continuous Learning Task Force. And the goal of this task force was to develop guidance for our educators to meet those immediate needs of supporting learning outside of the normal practices. And this task force consisted of over 60 dedicated educators who voluntarily convened for over 72 hours over the course of just 3 days. And we were fortunate to have two of our amazing staff Lucinda Crenshaw, teacher at West Middle School, and also our 2016 Kansas Teacher of the Year team member for the state, and also Susie Green, our early childhood coordinator. Those two individuals from Lawrence Public Schools did participate in the task force. And so there again, the Continuous Learning Task Force, they provided a framework with guidance and some support materials for districts around the state to use as a guide as they develop their continuous learning plan. Now, all of these teachers, there were teachers, coordinators, eventually there were principals and some superintendents around the state. They all shared their expertise and their insight to help guide and create this document for all Kansas communities. And now from this, as I mentioned, districts developed their continuous learning plan. And a part of this process, we were to apply for a waiver. Of course, we are obviously out of school for the remainder of this school year, and instead of us having to make up these days, we can apply for a waiver, and we'll apply for a waiver. And so basically, as a part of that process, and I think board members, you have it loaded in board docs, the actual waiver document, which includes the continuous learning plan. We were to share with the state as a part of this application how many hours we were already in session, and then how many hours we are requesting to be waived so that this time won't have to be made up. So from the Continuous Learning Task Force, about 10 common themes came from this process and this task force in terms of guidance for school districts. And these are the themes that are on your screen. I definitely won't read all of them, but there's a couple of them I do want to point out. The first one, less is more. You may have heard us here in the district talk about less is more. What are those 2 or 3 things that we can do and do well? And so I was excited to see that the task force did have that as a theme. They want us to be flexible and ready to adapt when needs arises. As part of the redesign process, there's this term called pivot, being able to pivot at a moment's notice. Number 3, emphasize relationships. Now, the board and community knows that this has been a huge focus for us in the district already. And so one of the themes from the task force was to definitely emphasize relationships in this new learning environment. Drop down to number 6, encourage the use of materials, resources, and platforms that are already in use. This group wanted to make sure that there was not a lot of new learning in this process. We didn't want schools and school districts adopting new platforms and new programs that would just kind of hinder this process. And so I was really excited about the fact that we were able to, or are able to use existing materials and resources. And I'll share that with some of those with you in just a moment. And then I'll fall down to number 10, which is extend grace to all in these unique and trying times. And so that was really exciting to hear this task force share with the entire state this whole notion or idea of extending grace and just understanding the different dynamics that our families and staff are facing during these times. Also from the guidance document, they gave us guidelines on daily maximum student commitment. Obviously, as I mentioned, we know that each family's dynamics are totally different. And so they gave us a set of guidelines in terms of times for instruction that we are to engage our scholars in instruction. And they're listed on your screen, from 30 minutes at pre-K to kindergarten to 30 minutes per teacher, grades 6 through 12, for a maximum of 3 hours per day. And so we use that as we continue to develop our continuous learning plan. On your screen, you see a graphic that was actually created by a gentleman by the name of Jay Dostal, who's a principal in Arkansas. And I think it speaks to really providing grace and relationships and less is more in those themes. And it also illustrated, and I just found this graphic the other day, but it really kind of speaks to how we operated or how we are operating in this process. Any educator who's obviously is an educator have definitely are familiar with Maslow's and his hierarchy of needs. And so during this process, we wanted to ensure, we are ensuring that we are taking care of those psychological safety needs, that love and belonging, before we get to this idea of continuous learning in school, which is at the top. And so while we know school is extremely important, we do recognize and understand that there are some external pressures and challenges that we are all facing. And so I thought this was a neat graphic to share in terms of the way we're thinking about our kids and our families and how we need to make sure that we are addressing their social and emotional needs as well. Additionally, you may have seen I shared a tweet that was actually, the idea came from, I thought it was Kevin Harrell, our special education director, but I found out the old adage behind every good man, there's a great woman. It was actually came from his wife. And so I kind of tweaked it and just posted it on social media, and it just, there it is on your screen. But I wanted to, because I was sensing a lot of angst in the community from our parents and our students. And so I just wanted to, as the leader of this district, I wanted to kind of just put this out there. And it was retweeted close to 100 times, and it was reshared, I guess, on Facebook over 1,200 times. And so just helping kind of calm some of the fears, and some of the comments that were posted after posting that really affirmed the fact that our families and communities needed to hear this. And so there again, this is how we are approaching this whole thing. Not on our watch is what we stated when we said, understanding that many of our students depend on school for more than just the academics. Many of our students and families depend on school to provide meals. And so we immediately jumped into action before a lot of other school districts around the state with our meal services. We identified 5 locations. Those locations are Kennedy, Swegler, Hillcrest, Liberty Memorial Central Middle School, and Billy Mills Middle School. We provided delivery services during those first 2 weeks and have since suspended delivery service, and I'll kind of talk about that in just a minute. But we're averaging over close to 6,000 meals per week that we are providing, to our families, both breakfast and lunch. And so we started doing this daily 2 weeks ago. Also 2 weeks ago, we started delivery services to our families, because there was we had the 5 locations set up, but there was a need for delivery service. There were some families that where transportation was just a barrier for them getting meals. And I definitely want to brag again on this team, our Lawrence Public Schools team, for coming together in such a quick fashion and at the drop of a dime to identify these 5 sites, have meals prepared at these 5 sites, and have a delivery service that was on the cutting edge in terms of technology, thanks to Zach, who actually, the middle image on the screen is a snapshot of what was on my cell phone of the routes that I was in charge for. I did delivery routes for 2 days. Yeah, I did delivery routes for 2 days, and so this was actually my route. And it would notify, so families filled out a survey and let us know that they needed these services. Included in that survey was obviously their address and their phone number, the cell phone number. And so once we were ready to leave with the food or the meals to come to their house, they would receive a text and to let them know that we were on the way. We would be there within 5-7 minutes, or they would give a time frame. And then once we dropped the meals off, it would send them a text and let them know that the meals had been delivered. And based on some feedback, that was extremely helpful for families and parents that were at work, but their younger children were home by themselves. They could just, rest easy knowing that, hey, their food was delivered. And so that was a really added benefit in terms of just making this process more efficient. Definitely have to shout out Paula Murish and our entire food services staff. Tony Bering, he organized the entire operation, the entire delivery operation. Our many volunteers, we had teachers that were emailing and posting on social media, community members that were wanting to volunteer, but obviously, we didn't want a lot of different hands, I guess, and different people in a certain area. And so many of our teachers volunteer to man the sites, and many of our teachers and other staff members volunteered to serve as delivery drivers. As I indicated, we have discontinued our delivery services for a couple of reasons, a number of reasons rather, but a couple of those is ensuring that we are making sure that our staff is safe. But not only that, making sure that our families are safe as well. From the time a meal is assembled there in the kitchen, from the kitchen to the cooler, from the cooler to the vehicle, from the vehicle to the driver, and from the driver to the door, that was just a lot of potential contamination, and we did not want to expose our families to that. We are and have reached out to other community partners that also providing meal services, but needless to say, we are still averaging daily over 1,000 meals per day, and that's breakfast and lunch. And we've gone to Mondays and Thursdays, and in those meal packets, they will have 3 sets of meals, right? Yeah, 3 breakfasts and 3 lunches. So there again, just wanted to kind of highlight our meal services that's still going on Mondays and Thursdays, but kind of share with the board and the community what we've done. And I think many of you have seen it was on 2 different Kansas City area news stations as well. After our 2 weeks of delivery services, Tony Barron received this email that says, "Thank you for the opportunity to be a part of such a great community outreach program. It was so well organized and hugely helpful to many of our families. Things like that make me proud to work in USD 497. I'm sad it couldn't be sustained, but totally understand why." And they were talking about the delivery services. "Please contact me if any other opportunities to volunteer to help families in need become available." And so that's just a true testament of how well, one, it was organized, but the impact that it made. And so I know many of you have seen maybe some pictures on social media, but I wanted to kind of share a quick video that Rachel put together, just kind of highlighting where we've been thus far. And I like that last quote there. We are learning together apart. So as we take a look at our continuous learning plan, there's 3 areas that are within our continuous learning plan that we will submit to the state pending board approval. And those 3 areas are academic support, social and emotional support, and family community communication. When we first learned that we would have to develop a continuous learning plan, we immediately told the team that we definitely want to put this in front of the board. And I think through conversations with Shannon that KSB believe the same thing. And so we definitely, and now it's required that it's signed off by the board president, but we definitely want to make sure that we share with the board our continuous learning plan and definitely get feedback. And as I mentioned, you do have a copy that's loaded in board docs of the actual document that we will send to the State Department, and that template was developed by them. So let's take a look at what we're doing in terms of academic support. So the State Department gave us 3 options, and those 3 options were online learning, face-to-face, but with 10 or less in a room, and then thirdly, packets, or we could do a combination of all 3. We chose the online learning, and I put there with supplemental materials because we are sharing and did share some printed materials. We actually mailed, I think I'll talk about this a little later, we actually mailed some documents to all of our elementary families' homes. So the first thing we did was survey our families, and I'm going to try to remember some of these questions. I'm looking at Zach also to help me with some of these questions. But we basically wanted to get some information from families in terms of internet access, supervision, who's supervising our children, not to get in their business and see who's at home, but understanding there again, as I mentioned, the different dynamics that our families are faced with. That maybe both parents that may be deemed essential employees may still be working and not at the home. Are they supervised by older siblings that are also our students? That may have a huge impact on our, if you're a high school student supervising younger siblings. So understanding that. We also wanted to know what time of day would work best for the family in terms of receiving instruction. There was a total of about how many questions, Zach? About 8 questions that we wanted to just kind of get some information as we develop our continuous learning plan, gain some information from our families. As I mentioned, one of those was internet access. And so we were already, as the board knows, we were utilizing Kajits, which are mobile hotspots. And just this past year, we became a partner with Sprint 1 Million Project, where we gained additional hotspots for students. And so we were able to, some of our students already had those devices, and we're able to deploy those should a student need those. In addition, many of our local internet providers have stepped up to offer free internet services, Midco being one of them. And then just making sure that we're offering tech support in this process, not only to our families, but also to our teachers as well. And I have to give kudos to our tech team under the direction of David Vignery. It has been really working like a well-oiled machine in terms of getting the work orders done and providing support to teachers and students and families. Also under academic support, so the idea of professional development. How will we provide professional development in this new environment for our teachers? And so in order for this to be, our continuous learning plan to be effective, we're providing professional development in various formats. We've provided staff with multiple options for on-demand professional learning to allow them to have the opportunity to choose the professional development that fits their needs. So, for example, staff can access tutorials, they can access webinars about setting up a new online learning platform, using our already existing resources, which is what I indicated earlier, which was a theme from the Continuous Learning Task Force. And so our current resources that we're already using, our platforms, is Seesaw at the elementary level, Unified Classroom, Google Classroom. So there's tutorials for those. There's also some advanced tutorials. And many of our teachers are creating videos and tutorials themselves and rolling it out to other staff members. In addition, we've partnered with many of our curriculum vendors who are providing live recorded webinars to assist staff in learning how to use these online resources in this new environment. And then finally, each of our buildings have designated instructional learning coaches. And our learning coaches are meeting regularly, and they've developed a plan to schedule support for our staff and to provide that grade level content, as well as individual support and professional development. One of the key questions in the continuous learning plan that we had to answer is how will we provide continuous learning and making sure that it's available to every student. And with that, also understanding, when we look at teacher availability, understanding the dynamics of our teachers in their homes. Because keep in mind, some of our teachers have children of their own, and now they are responsible for or assisting with their instruction as well. So making sure that we get information on teachers' availability as well. But when we think about our SPED students, special education students, 504, title students, ELL, and migrant students, we were already using strategies for example, for ELL learners, and we're already providing accommodations for example, for students with learning disabilities or students with disabilities. But we do know that that's shifting, so it's difficult to provide some of those services in a home environment that you were providing in a school. And I will tell you that the federal government, the state agencies are really grappling with how to provide these services to special education. But I will tell you what we're doing in Lawrence Public Schools. Students with exceptionalities, they will be supported through the creation of contingency learning plans. Each student that has an IEP will have a contingency learning plan. And these plans will be written to ensure that there's a collaborative effort between families and special education teams to develop services that are reasonable. And I'll say reasonable, but reasonable in light of our current circumstances. And so it is anticipated that these services, obviously, for a number of reasons, will look significantly different. So for example, if a student has a one-on-one para at school, probably not going to have a one-on-one para at home. So other services that they were getting in a school environment obviously will look different at home. But it will be designed and implemented to support access to the general education curriculum. And that's the focus of, one of the focuses of special education is how are our students with disabilities having access to the general education curriculum. So that's one piece of it. And then additionally, we have to be concerned with and are concerned with the progress on the individual IEP goals. And so our special education team have been communicating with special education teachers and continuously will be working on these continuously learning plans with our special education students. Our career and technical education, that's an area that we definitely have to look at. So those teachers, our CTE teachers, they met with the academic teachers and specifically in career field areas, and this was done across the district. Teachers have reviewed course competencies and identified what are those critical and essential standards that were not covered earlier this year. Learning activities have been designed to meet those competencies. They've also created some activities that they are including online in an online learning format, including face-to-face instruction, phone conferences, work-based learning, including some virtual field trips, as well as remote conversations with, some of them have already established mentors, so there will be some remote conversations with mentors and project-based work that can be done with affordable material in their homes already, in students' homes. And so as we continue to just kind of look at all of these different areas, we want to make sure we still are able to give students as much of an academic benefit as if they were in our classrooms. Our students will have the opportunity to participate in live lessons, as well as some pre-recorded lessons or any other type of posted content at any time during the day. Excuse me. Then, as I mentioned, those platforms that we were already using, are Zoom, Google Meet, our learning management system, including our PowerSchool Unified Classroom, again, Google Classroom, and apps at the elementary level, such as Seesaw. And I will say, when we think about our devices, that's one thing that I definitely appreciate the board taking action on several years ago, was allowing our high school students to have MacBooks, and now our K through 8 students all have iPads. And so this really assisted us in this process. Not only that, last year, or maybe a year and a half ago, the board approved us to work on our infrastructure, our technology infrastructure. And because of that, we're not experiencing some of the challenges that many districts around the country are experiencing. And so I appreciate the foresight in terms of really making sure that our technology in terms of hardware and infrastructure was or is solid. I will say some of the apps that are loaded on the iPads do not require internet services. And so when we think about the work that we've been doing around equity and making sure that all students have access, that was something that I was excited to hear, that some of the apps don't have to require internet service. And I shared with the executive leadership team. It was like I was a kid and received my first piece of mail in the mailbox. But obviously as an elementary school parent, I received the packet that all elementary school families received, and in it was a letter. In it was I guess a flyer from the technology department that indicated how I can receive help with technology. But not only that, it also had what they call choice boards. Choice boards are just a sheet of paper that gives families options of educational activities that they can do without technology, that they can do in their home. For example, have a student journal about what they saw when they went outside, something like that. In addition to that, for my my first grader, for any family that has a kindergarten through third grader, had sight words that you can easily go over with your children. So it's one thing to really understand the different dynamics that our families are going through. Many of our families and staff, teachers too, their significant others or family members have been laid off. And I will tell you, opening up a laptop and opening up an iPad may not be on the top of their agenda that day, but what I can do is sit down with my child or ensure that he or she is sitting down going over these sight words. And so I really appreciated our academic team really coming together and looking at ways that we can make sure that we are meeting the needs of all of our families. So with that, we do expect all of our students to participate in some type of continuous learning, and these continuous learning opportunities that are offered by the district to the fullest extent possible without placing any additional burdens or hardships on families. And we want to do whatever it takes to assist our students and our families in overcoming those barriers. And so what we didn't want and what we don't want is a lot of academic tasks that students have to complete, where it's just really adding additional burdens on families. So I just want to kind of share, I can't share everything because we would be here to 9 o'clock, and I probably need to pick up the pace here anyway. But I want to share some of the work that our academic team has been doing. And so, for example, this is an elementary school's weekly schedule at a glance. And so it just kind of shows you Monday through Friday, the focus on math, ELA, with those cross-curricular integrations of social studies and science. Still getting music, art, and PE and library 1 day a week. And teachers, and some families have access, I won't say some families, teachers have access to this, and they are sharing some of these links with families as well. So on the left side, you see the elementary continuous learning curriculum and technology supports, and these supports are really just there literally at a click of a button. On the right is an example of a fourth grade curriculum guide. And so our curriculum team looked at what are those, when we talk about less is more, what are those 3 essential standards that we feel that our students need to master before the end of the year? And so each grade level, at the elementary level, I know, just has 3 standards in ELA, 3 standards in math that they are heavily focusing on. And then, of course, it has the resources listed out there to to the right. So our teams have really been doing a tremendous amount of work ensuring that our teachers have the support that they need and our families have the support that they need. I wanted to share just a copy of or sample of a high school schedule. On the left is Lawrence High's continuous learning schedule. And I will draw your attention to the please note at the bottom that these are suggested times for students to log in and work on their classes, but students may engage with content for their, and something is blocking that, for their classes throughout the day. I think that's what it says. And I'll share with you some feedback that I received from some students around this. We still like to try to have some sense of normalcy when it comes to schooling. So on the right-hand side of your screen, you see a flyer where Free State High School is currently having a Spirit Week this week. Today is Thursday, so staff should have received a lot of shout-outs today. And tomorrow, it looks like, is Favorites Day. And so we're still trying to connect our students and ensure that they feel connected to school. The second piece of our continuous learning plan we want to talk about is our social and emotional supports for our families and for our students. Each teacher was asked to check in with their students. And so I have, obviously everyone knows I have 4 children in my home, 2 elementary and 2 high school. The 2 elementary ones, we did sit down with their teacher on a Zoom meeting. I think it was a Zoom meeting or Google Hangouts, but we could virtually see them. And one of the questions that they asked both of them was, and I was sitting right there, do you feel safe? And so when I talk about ensuring that our students are feeling safe, we want to make sure that our teachers are continuing to build those relationships, but not only that, making sure that they have a connection to students and that students are feeling safe. But the conversations, the purpose of those check-ins with our students and families is just to kind of get a better understanding of the family dynamics that I mentioned. Who's responsible for supervising you, or what does learning look like in this new environment for you? I've heard from some high school students where their family parents, one or both of the parents have been laid off, and they are having to pick up additional hours. And so if we go back to the schedule where there was a class that started at 9 o'clock, well, if I'm at work, obviously I can't get to that class. But our teachers are understanding that and providing additional opportunities in ways that students can engage in lessons later on during the day. Or what I learned from one of the students today at 2 o'clock in the morning, they were engaged in lessons. So those were the purpose of the teacher, student, and family check-in. So that was done at the high school level as well. Our use of counselors and social workers. Counselors and social workers will be providing building and staff families with a list of community resources. I think that has all already gone out. They will be serving as liaisons to assist families in accessing community resources. They will collaborate and communicate with building staff to support students and families who request additional support. We're using our building mental health teams to create student tracking forms that will actually document student interactions and the supports that were provided. Our counselors and social workers are working with our building administrators to create these on-call times that will be communicated and shared. We're obviously, I think I mentioned, we're sharing community resources. There will be on-call times, as I mentioned, for where students can access a mental health team member. I'm trying to see if I covered everything. In addition to that, Hosea's Court, our mental health facilitator, is collaborating with our mental health, community mental health partners, Burt Nash, as well as our RAP workers, just to make sure that we are ensuring that our students have some type of outlet. Even when our students were in school, we were grappling with making sure that we were able to meet their social and emotional needs. And I'll talk about this during our later on in the slides. But we want to make sure that our students still have access to these individuals. And so our building mental health teams and our counselors and social workers are making sure that they make themselves available for our students and families, for that matter. And I'll show you on this next slide an example of what Lawrence High we'll be sending out, and they're calling it a mental health moment, where they have self-care tips, asking students to make a schedule to kind of map up their day to take care of themselves. Mindfulness tips, the United Way 211, the resources there, Just Food resources, Burton Nash, and then reminding them that their mental health team is there for them. The last section I want to talk about is our family community communication. It was so much that I wanted to put on this slide, but I recognize that I really didn't want to go as long as I'm going now. But when we talk about our communications team, and we've received a tremendous amount of feedback. Even when I'm in grocery stores, people will stop me and say, I appreciate what the district is doing. The communication has been amazing. And there again, that's a huge shout out to Julie Boyle and Rachel Thomas in terms of getting our communication out. We've been communicating using all of our platforms, School Messenger, our websites, phone calls, just making sure that we are pretty much flooding our families with communication, but not just placing calls just to place call, but pertinent information that we feel that they need. Social media, we've been trying to make sure that we keep our community informed on social media. We've been partnering with our city and county governments as we communicate additional learnings from them, and we try to kind of collaborate with them as well. If you have not seen, which I think you have, our COVID-19 website, I think I have a link to it here in just a moment. Again, our electronic surveys, our Contact Us platforms, our families are using that. And the good thing about that is we're able to get back with them within 24 hours, and we're able to kind of see the chain of communication on there. And obviously, as I mentioned, our teachers that are contacting our students and families. And so this is our COVID-19, our coronavirus website, and it's just simply usd497.org/coronavirus. But it takes you to this website, which has a tremendous amount of resources on it, resources in Spanish. We want to make sure that we're able to communicate with all of our families, definitely our Spanish-speaking families. And so we've just included a lot of resources here for our families, even our staff. We will have our continuous learning plan here. This is the guide to the continuous learning plans. We created and continue to update question and answers or frequently asked questions section here that families can click on. Our grading practices, mental health resources, community food resources. And so this website is updated as soon as we get new information or learn of new information. So that's there available. And we've had this website since January. We've had our coronavirus website since the end of January. And then after that, we start seeing a lot of other school districts develop coronavirus websites. So I do, as always, I share with the board, I do want to talk about highlights and definitely talk about some challenges that we are currently facing or we may face. One, I just, again, want to highlight the amazing entire staff of Lawrence Public Schools, from our teachers, from conducting parades at the elementary level, to our secondary staff who's just transformed their homes into little small classrooms. All of our staff have really just been amazing during this process. And if you really think about the magnitude of what we accomplished in just a number of days, totally redesigning school and the way we deliver instruction. We were highlighted at the state level. So the executive leadership team meets daily at 10 o'clock now. In addition to that, I meet daily with and this is virtual, I meet daily with Randy Watson and other superintendents around the state. And Randy Watson has highlighted Lawrence Public Schools on 3 different occasions. One for our meal delivery service that was featured on Channel 4. He recognized us for our choice boards, which I mentioned that our teachers have and staff have created for families. It was actually shared with all superintendents statewide, and then other school districts were developing their choice boards, but that started right here in Lawrence Public Schools. And so people are really taking note and watching the things that we do in response to the way we are responding to COVID-19. We received positive feedback from parents, students, staff, and community members. You've probably seen some positive comments on social media. I do want to highlight two here from Martha Myers that was sent to Zach Conrad. She said, "Thank you so much for everything at the schools are doing. You guys are amazing. When it would be so easy to just say, yay, summer break, but you guys haven't given up. Thank you so much for everything." And Martha, she's a staff member, right? And then the comment to the right, which I thought was huge, that came from one of our students, Malik Berry over at Free State. And he says, "Amazing how fast and efficient USD 497 set up online classes for us students. And then he's talking to the students, let's make the most of the remaining time we have together." And so I thought that was really neat for a student to notice that. In addition, you've seen everyone's eyes were on Lawrence. Our communications team created a hashtag online in 497. And 2 days back to back, we were featured on Channel 41 with just showing how our students are engaged in learning at home. So the first time we were on the news, they were just asking about our continuous learning plan, and then the second day was highlighting the hashtag online in 497. So people are taking note of the great things that we have going on here in Lawrence. And I do want to share, I didn't have time to put this on a slide. I know you're probably saying, thank God, but but I do want to share, I met virtually with my Superintendent Student Advisory Council today, and I just wanted to get some feedback from them on how it was going, and this is the feedback that they shared with me. They felt that the teachers have good pacing with this new online learning, and they feel that teachers are adjusting well. They did indicate to me that the teachers have completed their check-ins, because I asked all of them, have your teachers checked in with you? And all of them said, yes, all of my teachers have checked in with me. And they said it helps seeing, and I thought this was huge, they said it helps seeing teachers in their words were a casual setting. It helps them as students see their teachers in a casual setting, because it helps break down barriers from what they feel is a teacher that's an authority figure. But they thought that seeing their teacher in the home, and they referenced, seeing the teacher with his or her cat or dog was helpful in terms of just seeing them as human. And then one student said this, I thought this was powerful. It really forces us to have a personal connection. He was saying that of the student and teacher relationship. It forces us to have a personal connection. When one student said it's less expectations on us as students in terms of getting up, getting dressed, doing your hair. So those stressors are not on them, but they feel relaxed and comfortable in their own environment, learning. And one of them said there are classmates that they don't necessarily talk to in class, but when they saw their face on the screen, they missed them. And so I thought that was extremely powerful. Of course, everything is not roses, right? We do experience some challenges and expect some challenges. And those are listed there. Obviously, this is not all the challenges that we will face. As I indicated, as we continue this path, we will pivot and adjust. But the first one is just navigating this new normal, really making sure that we are being mindful and understanding of how we can pivot, at the drop of a dime if something were to occur where we would need to make adjustments. So, for example, many internet service providers are beginning to look at their, I may not be using the correct term, their bandwidth or their capacity, because if you think about it, we have more adults that are working from home now. You couple that with students that are at school at home on the internet. Will their capability be able to handle all of that? As a matter of fact, I think Spectrum in the Kansas City area completely shut down a few days ago. And so in the event that and we already talked about that at our executive leadership team meeting the other day, in the event that our internet goes down here in Lawrence, what is our backup plan? And so that's why it's crucially important that we have already begun talking about ways that students can continue their learning without the internet. Obviously, always a challenge is students being away from school. Just that student, for many of our students, the safest place is school. And so making sure that, we as mandated reporters are still, sensitive and are aware of our students, in their home lives, and making sure that we are just staying connected to our students. And then obviously we want to continue to do a tremendous amount of work supporting our families as well as our teachers. Special education, as I mentioned, is a challenge, but we are, with our contingency learning plans, that will help. And then lastly, what I would call just the COVID slide. We're all familiar with the summer slide in terms of student regression, potential regression over the summer. With these additional months that we're out of school, we are concerned about the COVID slide in terms of students' potential academic regression over a number of months. And so we've already begun those conversations. And what we've been talking about is we have to, bless you, we have to think differently about how we start school, hopefully when we start back in August. But we have to have a different mindset, understanding that these past 10, 12 weeks, in addition to summer, we will have to think about that differently. But in addition, we've began to talk about how we can leverage our partnership with Boys and Girls Club in the summer, if they are cleared to begin, hopefully in June, how we can partner with them to ensure that our students don't miss or haven't missed as much. And so our next steps for our board, obviously, is hopefully for a motion to approve the continuous learning plan for the remainder of the 19-20 school year. And again, I want to thank our board for taking action on last week to reduce our number of credits from 23 to 21. Hopefully, if the board approves the continuous learning plan, our next steps will be to submit it to the Kansas State Department of Education. It's not due until the 8th, but what they've advised us to do is to not wait until the 8th to send them, because they have to look at all over 300 plans, and then the board, State Board of Education, will approve it hopefully at their April 14th board meeting. Our plan will be posted, I was told, will be posted on the State Department's website as well. And that was a lot of information. And as I indicated, you do have a copy of the entire waiver application packet, which includes the continuous learning plan. And with that, I will stop sharing the screen and take questions. All right.
I have a question. Can I jump in, Melissa?
Yes, go ahead.
Dr. Lewis, I was having a few technical difficulties, so I apologize if you already shared this. But I sent you a note about this. I've had a number of high school students that are seniors contact me about some clarity around their graduation. Mm-hmm. And I went through and read the communication that went out to students from Julie. It was pretty clear, but it does seem that some students are confused about whether or not they are early graduates or whether or not they're going to be receiving credit for their current classes based on their third quarter grades. Seniors don't seem to know whether or not they are to be attending or not attending. So can you talk a little bit about communication specifically for seniors and how you might follow up with them?
Yes, and we did talk about that at our executive leadership team meeting on yesterday as well as today, and we will work, or I think it may have already happened today, I have Anna on as well, met with our secondary principals along with Rick Henry to get some additional communication out just to our high school seniors. But yes, and what I've been sharing with students who have personally reached out to me about if I do have a B or A and I'm satisfied, is that learning doesn't stop. depending on but regardless of your post-secondary plans, there are some things that either you can go back and review, or some things that you haven't learned yet that will be beneficial to you at the next level. And we'll include some statements around this in our communication to our seniors, but encouraging them to still lean into those classes and learn as much as possible. That will help them at that next level, because some of the content that they will potentially be receiving, obviously they haven't seen it yet. And so, although they may have an A in that class, we want to make sure that they still have access and are leaning in and gaining as much knowledge as they can. So yes, they will receive a credit for that class. It will not negatively impact their transcript at all.
Yeah, and I don't mean to suggest that we wouldn't want to encourage attendance, but I do think it is to be transparent and fair to them as people that are about to launch into adulthood. It should be perfectly clear to them that they have a choice. And I think they are interpreting your leaning in and encouragement to mean you must attend or there will be a negative consequence. I just want to make sure for their own entry into adulthood that they're getting clear explanations of what the consequences are of attending and not attending, given the current context of COVID-19. I hope they attend, and I agree with you that it's the more that we can encourage them to attend, the better. But I do think they deserve a very clear, this is the consequence, this is not the consequence. You may graduate with these particular grades if you choose to.
Yeah, and I think we will be clear in that communication we sent out to them, because as I mentioned earlier, while we want to encourage learning and just model that you can always learn, we do recognize that this is a challenging time. And so if there's students that, okay, so now I can focus on this class, or now I can focus on helping my younger sibling, or now I can work more hours, we'll make sure we communicate to them that they won't be penalized.
I appreciate that, Dr. Lewis. And really, I just want to say, and I'm sure every board member will say this, it's been a heavy lift. It's impressive to watch what you all have done, and I'm really proud of your work. So thank you.
Thank you.
I agree. I have a question, and I know Shannon has a question, and I too kept on having to log off and log on. How are we, you probably addressed it already. How are we accounting for, I guess, ensuring that staff, teachers are reaching out to students, or have at least tried to make contact with students?
So
Scholars?
yes, that has been the expectations from all building principals. They've communicated that with staff, and with staff, to make sure that they are personally reaching out to each student. And just today, I know there were only, I think, about 10 of my students, my Superintendent Student Advisory Council members the other day, and of the 10 out of 10 say all their teachers have reached out to them. In the event that we have a family that has not received any communication, I'm sure they will let us know. But in terms of just, I don't think there's a way we can ensure that every single teacher has reached out, other than just going down the road and asking, all the students, has your teacher contacted you? But that's the expectation. And so far, like I said, based on my experience as a parent and talking to some other students, their teachers have been reaching out to them.
Shannon?
Thank you, Melissa. I had 3 questions, so I'm going to ask them all right now so I don't have to keep unmuting and muting. But I also wanted to echo what Kelly said about how proud I am of our district and the work that we have done in such short notice and such a crisis time. And I'm really excited to hear you share, Dr. Lewis, that that work has been recognized and shared across the state. I have always felt that we do great things in Lawrence Public Schools, and I'm really glad that we are able to showcase that work, even if it is in a time of crisis for other districts. So with that being said, the 3 questions I had, one, kind of piggybacks onto what Melissa was just asking, which is what is our plan for kids who don't re-engage? You know, our teachers, the expectation is that they have reached out. I imagine we will have some number of students who just don't re-engage for whatever reason. And so what are we planning to do about that? What has been the magnitude of need that we've identified regarding internet access issues? And has that been more or less than what we expected? And then finally, one thing that I haven't seen addressed in any of the communications I've personally received as a parent is what is the protocol for families? You know, previously when our kids were at the buildings, if a student got sick, couldn't participate, that sort of thing, you'd call the secretary, the attendance secretary at the school, and let them know what was going on, and that took care of it. What are parents expected to do if there is some reason why their student, it's not that they're choosing not to participate, but they can't because they're ill or some other thing is going on? And I haven't seen any really information even on a school by school basis about what the expectation is about how to address that situation.
Okay. So if I go back to your first question in terms of the plan for our students that don't engage, including in our plan, we talk about how our teachers are to then reach out to the parent. So I think you're specifically talking about high school students, or middle school or high school students that don't re-engage. We've shared that our teachers will reach out individually to those parents. There again, not in an accusatory way of, you know, we've been online for 2 weeks and your child hasn't engaged, but truly understanding possibly why. And so that was also the purpose of those check-ins on the front end, that teachers were to check in with every student, you know, on the front end, because that we may have a family that don't have internet connection and we don't even know that. But reaching out by phone to touch base with those parents to understand the dynamics on the front end. So hopefully we won't have a situation where no student has ever logged in. So even after each teacher has made contact on the front end and then 1 or 2 students never re-engage, we've asked the teachers to follow up with those teachers. Second question, the magnitude of the internet capability or access. Based on our survey, I think it was about 6% that were either no internet service to poor internet service. And so if we look at, you have it pulled up?
300 families, 300.
Okay. Of the students who took the survey, about 300 families, was that no internet?
That was poor internet or no internet.
Okay, poor internet to no internet, about 300 families, or about 6%. And we had over close to 3,000 respondents that took that survey. How many families don't have any internet? 65 families that don't have any internet. And so there again, with those teacher check-ins, we're able to, there were some identifiers in this survey. Yeah, so we already know who those families are and are working with building principals and our tech team to get either hotspots or to get them in contact with Midco. And then okay, I'm sorry.
Oh, Dr. Lewis, this is Anna. I was just going to chime in that at the elementary level, when they called each family, they also were able to get that information. And do you want me to answer, or were you going to answer Shannon's questions about if a student is ill and can't participate?
Yeah, go ahead. I was going to. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
Shannon, that's attendance is not, in that case, that's why the lessons are either posted or students have multiple opportunities to engage. The times that are shown, we recognize that it may not work with every family. So they wouldn't necessarily, they could let the teacher know, but part of the waiver is to waive the minutes, the required minutes, because we know there will be cases. So attendance is not formally been taken like when we were in our normal setting. So they just would need to be in contact with the teacher directly.
But still, again, if I could just add on to that, if a teacher notices at the elementary level that a student has not responded to a seesaw activity, or if a teacher at the high school level noticed that a student hadn't logged on to Google Classroom or responded to a discussion question or something like that, they will again engage the families around, just because I could have internet one month, but then the next month my internet is gone. So that's why those weekly check-ins and office hours are available for our families.
I think just to follow up on that, I think I'm imagining, and maybe it's because I live with a healthcare provider. I'm imagining worst case scenario where you have one of your children who maybe does get sick and is just really not even able to engage at all for some extended period of time. And at the elementary level, it would be easy because we've had the check-ins with our elementary teachers and it's easy to reach out to them. But I'm thinking more of middle and high school students, and each of my kids has 7 or 8 different teachers. And so I guess I would encourage us to think about whether there should be a single point of contact, at least for the middle and high schools, for a parent who in a true emergency needed to let the school know that something was going on. And I don't know if that would be, in this case, if it would be, should you be reaching out to the principal? Just wanting to make sure that parents understand what to do in that true emergency situation would be my thought. That's all.
Okay.
Thanks.
And there again, I would say the name of this game is grace. And so making sure that our teachers understand, okay, if I have a child that may have to be quarantined or severely ill, for 2 to 3 weeks, then we understand that the child is not penalized, but there's also ways that student can still complete his or her assignments. But if I'm out for 2 weeks, I'm not expected to complete all of these 2 weeks of assignments plus still keep up. Our teachers will make sure our students are given that tremendous amount of grace.
Paula? I think Paula had a question.
Yeah, hi. So I ditto what Shannon and Kelly said about the great job that we're doing at the district level. I had a question about, I know you mentioned the Boys and Girls Club, but I was wondering what was happening with Native American Student Services and that funding since it's going through district. If there was any way we could collaborate with that programming to maybe help provide those families for internet access. What is it that we're doing to making sure that money stays in the district and doesn't get sent back? Because that's a little over $120,000 would like to see spent in accessing services for those students. And I know in your plan, you addressed the children experiencing homelessness and kind of going off of the LHS graduates and communicating with them. How look and communicate with those SPED parents or parents with IEPs? Is that being, will those information go out or has it already gone out? Maybe I missed it.
I think I heard most of the question. How are we communicating with parents with IEPs around the contingency learning plan?
Right, yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
each individual student's case manager, the person that's responsible for writing their IEPs, will communicate with families. There again, this will be a collaborative effort. Well, as I say collaborative in a sense of doing what's best for students in giving this certain circumstance. I will tell you, and you may get some emails where, well, I won't say that, but we are making sure that given the circumstances, we are in this contingency learning plan, mapping out what we can accomplish, ensuring that the student has access to the general curriculum and the supports or resources or accommodations to the maximum extent appropriate in this environment. So to answer the question, the short answer is the case manager will be in contact with the parents.
Okay.
And I think that's an excellent idea to look at the NAS funding. And so, for example, if permitted, I would imagine that if there's a NAS student that needs a hotspot, I don't see why those funds couldn't be used for internet service. Obviously, I would have to look at probably have to lean on Kathy on that one as well to make sure I don't end up in an orange jumpsuit.
Any more questions?
Actually, I just have more of a comment. I want to commend the district on the job that they're doing, but I was able to I did a phone interview with the nativenetnews.com, and that reaches millions of listeners. And I commended the district on the great job that they were doing with, our students. And unfortunately, they have interviews they clip out, whatever. But I did commend the district on the efforts that they're doing. But I would like to point out that, April is Child Abuse Prevention Month and Sexual Assault Awareness Month. So I appreciate, as a sexual assault advocate, I appreciate the extra efforts and the compassion that you're showing to our students and families, because this time of quarantine is dangerous for some of those families where the home is not safe. So I appreciate all the efforts that the district is doing.
Thank you, Carol. I appreciate that.
Thank you. I know you've heard the thanks many times, but I will echo that, especially as an educator in another district. I knew the ability, I think I kind of alluded to the fact that I was like, were we prior military, because the ability, the quick thinking was just excellent. And where, of course, this is uncharted waters for everyone, but I will say to USD 497 staff and parents, the ability to get ahead of the game by the leadership of Dr. Lewis and the ELT team has just been phenomenal, to the point where I could even put individuals in my district at ease, this is coming, there's something coming. But I couldn't sleep not knowing what was going to happen as an educator myself. So kudos again to your leadership, and we couldn't be more proud.
Hi, this is Anna. I just was going to jump in. Jennifer Atokny has been reaching out to the families directly, gathering information about needs. And then as for Shannon's question, we can do a better job of communicating. If parents call the main line, and Zach is in there, he can correct me. We have forwarded the phones through the Jabber app, and either the principal or somebody will pick up the message if the parent leaves a message on the main line.
Yeah, I was just going to mention that Jabber app as well. And so what the Jabber app does, it allows teachers to call homes, and the school number will show up. It allows families to call the school, and it will go to the teacher's cell phone or the administrator's cell phone as well. So if a parent or family member does call a school to say my child is out 14 days and no one is there at the school, the message goes to the administrator's phone. And so that was something new over the past couple of weeks, I think. And so teachers are still downloading the app as well.
Erica, you had a question?
Yes, I just have a quick question comment. I also like to say thank you for, like Melissa said, thinking so quickly, putting things together. I'm very, very proud to be associated with the school district. So thank you for your leadership on that. My other question, and I know you addressed this in your presentation, is the COVID slide and then summer slide. Adding those two, not really events, but together, like what is the district, what's the plan when we start school for the next school year? Like what's the plan to try to combat that and try to overcome those obstacles?
Yeah. And so in my final comments, I was going to make a statement around it's unfortunate that this has happened, but I think there are going to be a number of benefits that come from this. One in particular, obviously, those of you who are parents, this has changed the role completely of the parent at home, obviously, right? And so I think our parents will have a more are given now a more in-depth look in the instruction. Not that they were totally disconnected. So I think this will help with the parent's role at home. Not putting everything on the parent, but I think it will help with the parent's role. Additionally, I think we have truly, what we're doing now is personalized learning. And so I think when we come back, even our teachers, other staff here are viewing the way we deliver instruction in a different way. Now, that does not negate the summer slide and what I call the COVID slide. And so to answer your question, those are the conversations that we're having now. So we're not waiting until August and looking at assessment scores and saying, oh, wow, this child didn't grow at all. We're having those conversations now. And so part of the plan is working with our Boys and Girls Clubs to make sure, and this is one of the things that I advocated at one of the meetings with Randy Watson. They were asking, what type of support do you need? Well, obviously, we know that there's no funding for summer school. We do know that there's going to be some money coming down to schools as a result of the federal government. We don't have all the stipulations of how we can use those funds, but I would, then there again, but that's if we're cleared by June, right, that we can begin this work. I would like to do a tremendous amount of work academically in the summer that we haven't done in the past in terms of true academic focus. Beginning of next year, Zach has already talked about some assessment that we can gauge how what did you call it, Zach?
What they've mastered, what they haven't.
Yeah. Basically, what they've mastered already and what they haven't mastered. So we'll know that day one, and so we can intervene much earlier. And so, I mean, it's something that has me losing some sleep about, because we know, particularly for our marginalized students, how that will impact them. And we think about the gap already. Is the gap widening, because of this? And that's the brutal reality that we have to face. And especially when we think about our equity work, and the work that we've been doing, has it come to a halt? Or the answer to that would be, I would think no. But I think we have to look at, as I mentioned earlier, how we start school a lot differently in terms of ensuring that our students are able to progress successfully during that whatever grade that they're in. So the short answer to that question is, we're having those conversations now, and definitely will develop a plan of action.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions?
If you're ready for a motion, I'll make it, Melissa.
Yes, please, Shannon.
Okay, I move the Board of Education approve the continuous learning plan for the remainder of the 2019-2020 school year.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Go ahead, Erica.
I'll second that.
Johnson,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Kadu Blackwood,
Yes.
Hill,
Yes.
Kimball,
Yes.
Gordon Ross,
Yes.
and Smith.
Yes.
The motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. I really appreciate the support, and I cannot commend our team more than I've already have for the tremendous amount of work that they've done, from our executive leadership team to all of our district staff to our amazing teachers, food service workers who have made up in their mind that we will continue learning. And I know you've probably seen some of the memes that are on social media about how parents are now viewing teachers' role in education. But as I mentioned earlier, I think there's going to be a lot of good come from this in terms of how we deliver instruction, our parents' role at home, and I do think this will help with our redesign efforts as well.
Yes, thank you so much. Before we adjourn, just take this opportunity to remind people to practice social distancing, stay at home, looking at the data, we're not doing very well as far as adhering. So please, 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 the quicker we follow the guidelines, I know it's hard. The quicker we follow these guidelines, we can flatten the curve, change it so that we can be able to get back to as normal as possible.
If I could give one shout out to all of our students with autism. Today is World Autism Day. I'm wearing my blue. Shout out to all of our amazing and brilliant students, community members with autism.
Yes. Motion to adjourn. Anything else?
Nope.
I'm circling, so I don't know if you can hear me. So I move we adjourn.
Second, this is Shannon. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you again, Dr. Lewis, and all the employees.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.